Hello and welcome to another edition of the Federalist-Files podcast. We're going to be going over Federalist number 11, titled The Utility of the Union in Respect to Commercial Relations and the Navy, written by Alexander Hamilton, written on November 24th, 1787. Topics include need for a federal navy for international commerce and national security, and combating European superiority. And so in this paper, Hamilton implores the necessity of the federal government as it relates to the regulation of commerce, the protection of commerce as well from foreign influence. And he begins, and I quote, "The importance of the Union in a commercial light is one of those points about which there is least room to entertain a difference of opinion, and which has, in fact, commanded the most general assent of men who have any acquaintance with the subject. This applies as well to our intercourse with foreign countries as with each other," end quote. So he's saying that this is completely imperative and completely necessary, and there really is no room for disagreement here, because this is the existence of the country. Next, he states, and I quote, "There are appearances to authorize a supposition that the adventurous spirit which distinguishes the commercial character of America has already excited uneasy sensations in several of the maritime powers of Europe," end quote. So here, what he's going to end up alluding to in this entire paper throughout is that countries in Europe are going to become, because of our commercial abilities, because we are a developing nation at this time, and we do have a lot of natural resources, they're going to become jealous of us, and they're going to try to intervene in our commerce to try to make the money up, meaning the money that they're going to be losing, they're going to try to come into our country, take our valuables, and we will be selling it for the very first price, as in we will just directly sell to the European nations, such as like a Spain. He mentioned Spain, France, and Great Britain as the three big ones. We'll sell to them first, and then they'll take our goods and our products and sell them again. So they'll be almost like a middleman. So we'll be missing out on a lot of that commerce because we don't have a navy. That's really what he's going to allude to in this paper here. And then he continues, and I quote, "Those of them which have colonies in America look forward to what this country is capable of becoming with painful solicitude," end quote. So that's exactly what he's talking about. He's saying that, these other countries, they're looking forward to seeing how successful America is with all of its goods and resources, and in doing so, it will end up, they want to get in on that money that's going to be made. And he continues, and I quote, "Impressions of this kind will naturally indicate the policy of fostering divisions among us and of depriving us as far as possible of an active commerce in our own bottoms. This would answer the threefold purpose of preventing our interference in their navigation, of monopolizing the profits of our trade, and of clipping the wings by which we might soar to a dangerous greatness," end quote. So, like I said, you're gonna see these other countries try to deprive us of that active commerce and to interfere in the navigation of the West Indies. He mentions the West Indies, and which is at that time the West Indies. I was looking it up. The West Indies, I believe it was certain islands in the West Indies, the Caribbean, were owned by Danish. It was Danish land, and then some of it I think was also Great Britain. So that channel there would have been used for trade for us, because we would have traded with the Danish and the Great Britain that were in that area, and then they could use it also as a hub to move those products and goods back to their homelands. And the Mississippi River as well, he mentions, and the Western Lakes too, right next to the Mississippi River. He alludes to it, and it's just pretty much saying that, these other countries are going to try to come in and take our goods from us and monopolize a lot of our industries from us. So now, the hope is that the federal government will facilitate commercial intercourse within the states as well as internationally through that navy, through that powerful, energetic navy. And he continues, and I quote, "We may oblige foreign countries to bid against each other for the privileges of our markets. This assertion will not appear chimerical to those who are able to appreciate the importance of the markets of 3 millions of people," end quote. So he's pretty much saying the markets, we're also going to be buyers. We're going to be buyers and we're going to be sellers. At this time, the United States was comprised of 3 million people. So pretty much just saying, we're going to have people that are big time buyers, and people are going to have to, these other foreign nations are going to have to bid against each other, which will, in essence, it'll bring down the price. It'll be market-based economy. It'll be supply and demand economics. When you have so many TVs, for example, in our economy, if you want to look at a system that's completely free market based, you look at the sales of televisions. If you've noticed over the years, we went from just having regular HD 720p to 1080p, and then the refresh rate increased from 60 hertz to 120. I think it's called gigahertz or something of that nature. So you're looking at a higher refresh rate. You're looking at a much more HD, better pixelation in your televisions. Now I was just looking the other day, we have 8K TVs now too as well, which is insane. I didn't even know it was, to that extent. I knew that there was 4K was our highest grade in terms of screen pixelation. So that's really a free market system. That's probably the most free market with the least restrictions that I could really think of in a market economy that is that relates to modern usage. And that system, years ago, if you were buying a 4K television and it was a 65-inch TV, like 5 years ago, it was maybe $2,000. Now that'll run you maybe $500. So as time goes on, technology gets better, the product's getting better, and it's lowering the price, because if you think about how many companies there are that make televisions, you got TCL, you got Vizio, you got Sony, Samsung, Westinghouse, there's so many, Toshiba, TCL, I don't know if I mentioned them. There's just so many different companies that are in that industry of making TVs that it does lower the price, and it also makes a better product, because there is money to be made especially every single Black Friday right now. People are going crazy for their televisions. So what Hamilton is referring to here is that these other countries are going to have to bid against each other. It's gonna make a better product, and it's also going to give us a better price, because we have 3 million people. We're really huge economically. We will be big time consumers. So he briefly, like I said before, he briefly cites the West Indies, owned by Great Britain and Denmark at the time, and saying that we need to control this trade amongst these European nations by putting certain impositions on the British and controlling this area with the Federal Navy. He was really, really keen on putting impositions, or rather like taxations, or making it more and more difficult for the British colonies or the British government to buy our goods. I'm thinking at that time, just because we got them right off our backs, he kind of wanted to make them pay, and he thought that there was probably a common theme amongst the Americans at the time that were living in these confederacies or these Confederate states. They probably felt the same way as him, that they really needed to pay. We weren't going to let them walk all over us. In general, all of Europe. In this one, at the very, very end, Hamilton pretty much condemns all of Europe and just eviscerates them. He annihilates them at the very end of this paper here. He outright just condemns them, really. Now, the protection of this commerce will be contingent on the creation of a powerful federal navy to protect our commerce and assets. Additionally, Hamilton argues that the federal government would aid in the goal of creating treaties of commerce, which in today's day and age would be considered trade deals, obviously. But what he's really worried about is having that powerful federal navy to protect our commerce and our assets, and pretty much get us good prices on our resources, and having that federal navy rather than separate Confederate Republic or separate state navies. It would be better because there's that one funding source of the country, and that's it, rather than each state. Some states may have the money to actually fund a navy, and then some states may not, and then some states may not even need a navy because they're not right off the water. for example, like a Pennsylvania really, with the exception of the Hudson River, there's really not that much water going through Pennsylvania, from what I understand. There wasn't that many trade navigation routes. So now he continues, and I quote, "A further resource for influencing the conduct of European nations toward us in this respect would arise from the establishment of a federal navy," end quote. So that's exactly what I'm saying. It's kind of, he becomes very repetitive in this one, just saying how important that navy is and that naval structure, having that strong federal navy. And he states that with an efficient government, that the U.S. can put into power a navy, and I quote, "which, if it could not vie with those of the great maritime powers, would at least be of respectable weight if thrown into the scale of either of two contending parties," end quote. So the two contending parties that he's referring to, one of them for sure is Great Britain. The other one may be either Spain or France. I don't know exactly which one. I want to say it's France, because then he does mention Spain, and he makes it like they have a much better connection with Spain at this time. So he's really saying, hey, listen, we want a navy, we want a strong navy, but we need at least something, because we need something that it doesn't. We're not saying it has to be more powerful than Great Britain, because Great Britain at this time had a very powerful navy. They still do to this day. That is one of their staples in their country. They've always had a very strong navy. He's just saying we need somebody to contend with them and let them know, if you attack us, there's going to be bloodshed. It's not going to be a slaughter or an annihilation. It will be a battle. You will lose people just like we will lose people. So if in control of these West Indies waters, it would be, and I quote, "a situation so favorable would enable us to bargain with great advantage for commercial privileges. A price would be set not only upon our friendship, but upon our neutrality," end quote. So that's exactly what I was referring to earlier, is that there will be, because of that commercial interest in that area, you will have to pay for that price. You're going to have to pay for that friendship with the United States, because we're going to always have the good stuff. We're always going to have the good resources. Made in America is a thing at this time. I guess it is a principle that we do have good we have good stuff. We are selling. I think he mentions iron would be coming from the middle of the United States. Wood would be coming from the southern part, because apparently it was much more powerful, like stronger. The wood, for whatever reason, is more resilient. And then the north is where all of our sailors would come from. I think he refers to that in this paper. Just talking about, you want to stay in the good graces of the United States, because we're going to have a strong economy. We're going to have a lot of consumers in that economy as well. And you're going to have to pay the price for our friendship. But you're going to have to be neutral with the United States and not mess with us, or it'll be a problem. Now, Hamilton infers that America, currently standing at 3 million strong, would serve as a good exporter and an importer for any country looking to trade. Now, Hamilton claims that such commercial relationships would be beneficial to the security of the Union, but he emphasizes that the need for a federal navy as a strong display of power to keep enemies at bay. He displays in this excerpt, and I quote, "Enemies having nothing to fear from us would with little scruple or remorse supply their wants by depredations on our property as often as it fell in their way. The rights of neutrality will only be respected when they are defended by an adequate power. A nation despicable by its weakness forfeits even the privilege of being neutral," end quote. So here, what he's saying, and when he says depredations, he means attacking or plundering, or pretty much what the Vikings used to do to people. Used to just come right into their nation and just steal and pillage everything. And what he's saying is the right of neutrality would only be respected by a strong, adequate power. Kind of like when Trump says something like, "Oh, we spend a lot on our military, we spend a lot on these missiles, or we spend a lot on these nukes," and he goes, "We spend a lot on them, but we never want to use them, but we have them. We spend that money to know, hey, listen, we have them. We have the knockout punch, we have the knockout power, I'm just letting everybody know we don't want to use them, but if we have to, we're going to use them. And that in and of itself works as a deterrent from attacks from other countries. Now, he plays out the scenario with no federal navy that our enemies would avail themselves of our universal impotence and prescribe the conditions of our political existence. They would become the primary carriers of commerce, and we would be prevented from partaking and be confined to passive commerce. Now he explains this, and I quote, "We should then be compelled to content ourselves with the first price of our commodities, and to see the profits of our trade snatched from us to enrich our enemies and persecutors," end quote. So that's exactly what I was saying before, where I was saying he talks about, our commodities, our goods, we would just get the first price. We would not be able to, it would be a wholesale price. For example, if you go, let's say you go online and you want to buy ammo. The ammunition depot is getting that money, they're getting that ammo straight from, let's say, what's the company's name? American Eagle. It's called Federal American Eagle is the brand. So Federal American Eagle, they're the ones selling at that first price. They are selling that good, that round, the bullets. They are selling it at a wholesale value to Ammunition Depot. That's the name of the place that you can get your ammo at. Right now you can't find ammo anywhere, but I'm just using this as an example. So let's say that wholesale price, you can get 50 rounds for $10. That's what they're getting. That's the wholesale value. Federal American Eagle has a contract. They sell so many rounds. They give it up to Ammunition Depot, and then Ammunition Depot doesn't charge 10 for that 50. They'll charge maybe $15 for that 50 rounds. So they're also making money off of that. Now, what Hamilton's referring to is that very first price, that wholesale value, is what we are going to be giving our enemies and our persecutors, like a Great Britain or Spain or France. We're just going to sell straight for that wholesale price. We'll pretty much, what he's saying is, we'll be used and abused by these European countries in trade deals. We're going to get screwed. We'll be giving them the best price, and then they're going to turn around and they're going to make a profit on exactly what they bought from us. But they're not going to make like a small profit. It's going to be a substantial margin that they're going to make on all of our goods, because we have no federal navy, and it's the same for the military. We have no federal army. We have nothing to defend ourselves. We have nothing to, to deter these people from taking our goods from us. Now he continues, and I quote, "That unequaled spirit of enterprise which signalizes the genius of the American merchants and navigator, and which is in itself an inexhaustible mine of national wealth, would be stifled and lost, and poverty and disgrace would overspread a country which with wisdom might make herself the admiration and envy of the world," end quote. So what he's referring to is, if we don't have that military, you're going to see all of our resources, all of our national wealth just be stifled and taken away from us, from another country, and then you're going to see widespread poverty and disgrace, which would be pervasive in our country at that point. And we're pretty much going to might make herself the admiration and envy of the world, as in all these people are looking at us like, wow, they had so much and they could have really done something well with it, and look, they screwed up. Without a navy, Hamilton concedes that our fisheries would be in jeopardy because we would lose access to the western lakes and the Mississippi River. This is something that I referred to earlier, and I think he cites that it's France. It's going to be France and Great Britain, and then he mentioned something about Spain, but because Spain at that time owned Florida, so that would make sense that Spain could kind of have their hand in it a little bit if they wanted to. I'm just trying to figure out what the Western Lakes are exactly. I'm trying to find it online here. I think he's referring to the rivers that were kind of right next to that connected with the Mississippi. I guess they were calling them the Western Lakes, because at that time the Western Lakes, if you're referring to like Oregon, those areas really weren't owned by the United States at that point. So now Hamilton feared that without a navy, commerce with America would be in jeopardy and destabilized. Furthermore, other nations wouldn't partake in trade with America because of the absence of security and no guarantee of receiving those goods. So if you have some sort of a deal with, let's say, Great Britain, and then on your way to ship your goods to Great Britain, it all gets attacked and plundered by Spain, no one's going to want to trade with you when you can't guarantee a transfer of goods, which is another reason that you need a federal navy and a federal military. Now, this is a common theme throughout the Federalist Papers, the fear of military suppression from other countries. The authors believe that disunion would exacerbate this issue, which I've said many times at this point. The authors believe that America at this time appeared feeble to outside countries because of population, inadequate amount of wealth, funding. Therefore, the reasoning for a union to create one national defense and enable the people with the rights to help fight for their country if the opportunity ever presented itself. Now, he states, Hamilton, and I quote, "A unity of commercial as well as political interests can only result from a unity of government," end quote. And then he continues here, and I quote, "To this great national object, a navy union will contribute in various ways. Every institution will grow and flourish in proportion to the quantity and extent of the means concentrated towards its formation and support. A navy of the United States, as it would embrace the resources of all, is an object far less remote than a navy of any single state or partial confederacy, which would only embrace the resources of a single part," end quote. So this is exactly what I was saying, is there's going to be a union not only of these particular states, but there'll also be a union of their resources in terms of the revenue that's going to be collected through the commercial setting and taxation. And in doing so, there will be a much larger bank account to fund this naval resource and other military needs and necessities. Now, Hamilton details, like I said, this is something that I mentioned before. He continues with, he talks about how wood will come from the South, which provides much more durable wood and metal in the middle states because there is plenty of iron ore. And he said that the sailors will be chiefly drawn from the northern hive, whatever that's supposed to mean. I guess at that time they wanted sailors from the north, maybe because they were more experienced, which would make sense because there was a lot of docks in New York, up in Massachusetts as well. That's where all the ships were sailing back and forth, a lot of exporting and importing. So then you would, at that point, any sailors, they'd be much more educated on sailing, or they'd be much more experienced. Now, he explains, and I quote, "Commercial enterprise will have a much greater scope from the diversity in the production of different states. When the staple of one fails from a bad harvest or an unproductive crop, it can call to its aid the staple of another," end quote. So this is pretty awesome. What he states here is, if we have one state, let's say New Jersey only they do mostly corn. Well, no, New Jersey does mostly tomatoes, and then you got Pennsylvania does mostly corn. If we have a bad season in New Jersey and we run out of tomatoes and they don't grow at the same rate that we thought they were going to grow at, then we can go get some corn from Pennsylvania. That's really what he's stating here, which is good. When you're unified in a way like that, you can kind of help each other, because these are things about survival, being able to eat, being able to put food on the table for your family. So it is nice that if one goes bad, then another state can kind of make up for it in terms of the commerce, because then you're also gaining taxes, you're gaining some sort of revenue from that commerce. So if you have all commerce, like currently everything that's going on right now, if you have a huge shutdown of the commerce, and then you're going ahead with these different bills in order to this PPP or whatever the heck it's called, these COVID relief bills that they're pushing, and then you also have I can only imagine what the revenue take in this year is going to be. It's going to be at a substantial loss, the GDP and the revenues that have been gained through taxation. So if you're continuing to make more and more spending bills, it's going to eventually, like I said in my last video, your money's going to end up running out because there is no revenue being gained through that commerce. If you're shutting down all commerce, you're saying all places need to close at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock, there's going to be a lot of money lost in not only commercial gain Because once you shut down the commercial game in this kind of a market economy like the United States, it's not like, it's not like Italy where everyone goes home at 12 o'clock to go eat lunch and then they come back to pretty much close up shop. You are taking away, when you take that commercial gain away, you're taking away pay for people, which is how they feed their families. You're also taking away revenues that are gained through taxation, so you're taking away funding of the government. So then when the government turns around and wants to give some sort of relief bill to these families that are not making money, the money that they're giving them is of less value because it's money that's not backed up by any type of foundation if the economy's not working the way in which it's supposed to. So really, like I said, any government intervention in the economy, in the markets, especially a substantial one like a total federal shutdown of all the states, is a complete and utter calamity, and it will be a disaster. It will only yield disastrous results, because anytime that you intervene, the government intervenes in any type of commerce, it always ends up being a total mess and a complete disaster every single time. I mean, even if you look at the way in which they bailed out, years ago, a long time ago, they bailed out all of these car makers in the United States, and instead of letting them naturally fail, they bailed them out. So now currently GM is still deep in the hole, and I think Ford's in the hole too. But Ford actually, from what I understand, Ford didn't even want the money. They didn't even want the government bailout, but the government still handed them the bailout because they're afraid of Ford and GM going under because of the jobs that they represent. But the issue with that is, when you pay them so they don't go under, nothing gets fixed. It's just putting a band-aid on the problem. It's just like clearing up the student debt. You do not fix the apparatus problem, the actual organizational issues at hand. All you do is you really put a band-aid on a huge cut that really needs stitches. That's all that ends up happening. And then now you look, I mean, we bailed out GM how long ago, and GM is now deep in the hole again. And because they did not fix anything, they did not put the right people in the positions, they didn't change the way in which they do their business. They just continue to do the same failing. They have the same failing business model, and it continues to go further and further into the ground instead of letting them crash and then having other automakers buy them up, and then they will fix the problem. But they didn't want to lose them as an American company. I think that's what their big concern was, especially GM, because GM does make a lot of our military stuff. But I'm going to continue here. Now, merchants won't have a stagnation in their markets because of this high variety of articles and goods. Pretty much what Hamilton stated before is that we will have a high variety of goods. We'll have, in New Jersey we'll be growing tomatoes, over in Pennsylvania we'll be, growing corn, and then there's going to be the textile industry that takes place over New York. So if you're a merchant, the way I like to look at merchants is I think of them almost as like the owner of a convenience store. You got a little bit of everything. And during, some times of the year, maybe the crop yield from a tomato is not as good. Maybe you're selling more corn. Maybe you're selling more shirts, like the textile industry. And it's good to have a variety, because at all times it'll stop the stagnation. You will continue to be able to make money and revenue, and the commerce will just continue. It'll flow nicely. Now, Hamilton concludes, and I quote, "A unity of commercial as well as political interests can only result from a unity of government," end quote. This is something that they've talked about. This is the philosophy, really, of the papers in its entirety. They talk about, protecting property. They talk about unity for commercial reasons, for national security reasons. Now, in closing, Hamilton writes a long but extreme call to action in regards to Europe that perfectly depicts the philosophy most patriots had about the quote-unquote European superiority. There was this weird complex that Europe had, that they thought that they could pretty much go in and they can plunder and they can ravage other people's wealth and their goods. So he states in a very long statement, and I quote, "Europe, by her arms and by her negotiations, by force and by fraud, has in different degrees extended her dominion over them all. Africa, Asia, and America have successfully felt her domination. The superiority she has long maintained has tempted her to plume herself as the mistress of the world, and to consider the rest of mankind as created for her benefit. Men admired as profound philosophers have in direct terms attributed to her inhabitants a physical superiority, and have gravely asserted that all animals, and with them the human species, degenerate in America, that even dogs cease to bark after having breathed a while in our atmosphere. Facts have too long supported these arrogant pretensions of the Europeans. It belongs to us to vindicate the honor of the human race, and to teach that assuming brother moderation. Union will enable us to do it. Disunion will add another victim to his triumphs. Let Americans disdain to be the instruments of European greatness. Let the 13 states bound together in a strict and indissoluble union concur in erecting one great American system, superior to the control of all transatlantic force or influence, and able to dictate the terms of the connection between the old and the new world. End quote. So that's a pretty substantial, powerful statement that Hamilton makes. Pretty much, Europe's gone around; they've taken over Africa, Asia, and in America they had the colonies, and everyone's pretty much felt the domination of Europe. All of these people that are really imperialist. And in summation, Hamilton and other founders had true disdain for the antics of this imperialism of these European countries that are characterized in this paper as a false belief of superiority. And this is a call for Americans to signify by example what true freedom is, and repel the actions of those European imperialists, and be a beacon of hope for the rest of the world that has been under the boot of Europe. It is just a strong statement, pretty much like, hey, look, these Europeans, they pretty much make fun of us. They say all of these negative things about America. Animals can't even live here because it's such a terrible place, and they make it like that they are physically superior to us. And there was, at this time, I guess there was some philosophers that thought that, Europeans were physically superior to, other human beings, because they were just, because they were going around pretty much taking everyone over. And at this time, there really was not the science that there is now to understand that no one's superior to anybody else. So that's it for this one. Next one's going to be Federalist number 12. It's titled The Utility of the Union in Respect to Revenue. So that one's going to be talking about import tax. That'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting one, because we really haven't got into the impositions or the duties on taxations, stuff like that. So I appreciate you for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe. Make sure you drop the mic on anyone who doesn't know about the podcast. Today's Wednesday, so I'll be coming out with another one on Friday. I just wanted to address, I don't know what the heck is going on with this situation. I usually record these a day or so before the day in which they release, but this situation with Sidney Powell, I don't know what the heck's going on. Trump's lawyers are all saying she's not part of his crew now, because she must have went out there the other day in that video, and like I said in that video, the Dominion voting systems, I said, man, if all this stuff is true, this is pretty serious allegations. But I mean, Tucker Carlson even said it, and she doesn't have, where's the evidence of it? And it seems like the way in which the Trump legal team is now distancing themselves from her must mean that she must not have the damning evidence that she was making it out to be. But who knows? We'll see what ends up happening. I think there's going to be a lot of court proceedings in these upcoming weeks. So at this point, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll make a video about it. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening throughout the week. But, I'll see everybody on Friday. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving. And any of these people that are online trying to tell you how many people you can have at your house, or, make sure, I've seen these posts, call somebody, call one of call your family members and tell them you love them, but just don't see them for Thanksgiving. You can tell those people to go take a long walk off a short pier. That is total and utter garbage. You don't tell other people how to live their lives when they're abiding by the law. And I don't care about the law as in the executive orders of the governor. I'm talking about the Constitution law. I'm talking about freedom. I'm not talking about your garbage executive orders that are completely arbitrary, unconstitutional. And also, not really legal because it doesn't go through the legislature. It's just something that the governor just drums up. I don't really even think it's in his legal power. The court is just allowing him to do it. So, that's... I wanted to address that because I see a lot of people posting online telling other people to stay home for Thanksgiving and not go see their family. And, I don't know what world we're living in right now where other people were letting other people depict, how we live our lives and just going to people's houses if that's what we're doing now. It's a complete and utter joke, and I'm pretty disgusted by it. It's pretty, it's just reprehensible. I mean, I don't know how else to characterize it. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you share. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you drop the mic. Everyone enjoy their Thanksgiving, and I'll see everyone on Friday.